More Australians are renting than ever before, and a combination of rising rents and stagnant wages is making it harder for many to keep a roof over their heads. It's a vicious circle. Higher rents are squeezing people on low incomes. They're also hit by a drop-off in public housing stocks. Middle to high income earners who can't afford to buy houses are competing with the low income earners for the rental stock that's available, and that drives up prices. But as Michael Vincent reports, Australia's top real estate body rejects concerns there's a rental affordability crisis.
Across the nation's three biggest cities, rents have been rising. This bedsit in a former industrial area, 5 kilometres from Sydney's CBD, is being offered for a remarkable $470 per week.
Okay, so what you do, you live in this room, $470, no car parking.
1 bedroom, 1 wardrobe, 1 balcony.
Yep.
Malcolm Gunning is a property agent in inner city Sydney.
What you don't need here is a lot of furniture.
He's also the president of the Real Estate Institute of Australia.
Not for everyone, but if you want to live and have that convenience, that's the way you live your life.
Many Australians might balk at forking out almost $500 a week for a room.
No, I don't accept there's a rental affordability crisis. Most of the stats are focused on Sydney, Brisbane and Melbourne. If you want to live in the fringe of the city, it's affordable. If you want to live closer in the city, it is expensive.
60 kilometres away, that bedsit costs slightly more than a rental unit Wendy Gammon and her son are looking at in Penrith on the city's fringe.
Okay, we're going to have to sort out all these leaves, Bradley, and we could afford 400 would get us a unit. I'm now 53, and to live in a unit for the first time in my age would be probably a bit of a shock.
Wendy's already had one shock, being evicted from this rental home after 7 years. It's being demolished to make way for new units.
Another 7 years and moving on.
Wendy's son, 23-year-old Brad, is now moving back in with his mum to help pay the rent.
Me and my girlfriend moved out on our own for 6 months.
Yeah.
Little 1 bedroom. The hot water tank we had enough hot water for probably a 30-second shower each. It was it's a nightmare.
Her husband's a truck driver and she works in a call centre with varying hours. Rent money's tight.
My job is much more volatile, and so it's always a stress for me for my shifts.
Bird book.
Oh, it's a good book. We need our bird book.
Like millions of Australians, the family expect to be renters for life.
It's something you don't really get used to. It's not a nice feeling at all.
And that uncertainty about where am I going to have to go next?
Well, yes, I always think, oh, am I going to be homeless?
The reason the rents haven't dropped, particularly in Melbourne City, is because of population growth.
The president of the Real Estate Institute says the pressure on renters is not going to ease up. He has some tips: negotiate your rent lower, move outside the major cities, or get extra work and cut back on spending.
Maybe even, God forbid, get 2 jobs. Okay, now your viewers will hate that. Okay, but many, many people do it. A lot of our migrants work a couple of jobs.
As house prices have skyrocketed, the number of Australians renting has grown steadily over the past 18 years to 31% of all households.
Look, we really are in a bit of a crisis, and it's been a crisis that's been brewing for a long time.
Leo Patterson-Ross is from the National Association of Tenant Organisations.
I think it's the uncertainty that gives people a lot of fear. We really don't know what we're going to be paying in a year, in 2 years, in 10.
Across the 3 major cities, median rent has soared higher than wages and inflation for the past decade. But real estate data company CoreLogic disagrees. In data exclusively provided to 730, it reveals the percent of household income required to rent has not increased significantly.
Renting is relatively affordable. Generally across Australia, most households are dedicating about 26 to 28% of their gross household income towards paying a landlord. If you're paying down a mortgage, some cities like Sydney, we're finding households are dedicating about 48 to 50% of their gross annual incomes to paying down a mortgage.
Tim Lawless doesn't believe there is a rental affordability crisis in Australia, but he accepts low-income earners are suffering.
This is a segment of the marketplace that's absolutely under the most rental stress. We're seeing wages growth overall tracking very, very slow, less than inflation, but also we're finding in those lower income brackets, so it's the lower quartile, that's generally where we're finding income growth is even lower.
Charities and community housing advocates say governments are not investing enough in public housing, forcing those at the bottom onto the street. Melissa Jones feared she would be homeless when she fled Hobart 5 years ago to live on the Gold Coast.
I just had to really get the kids out because we weren't in a really good way when we left. I don't get a word out of him.
Under the National Rental Affordability Scheme, she gets extra government money to live in community housing supported accommodation.
I feel powerful. I've done better than I've done ever in my life with a bloke. I can do this on my own. I know it's feeding time.
But the scheme runs out in 3 years and she says she will no longer be able to afford to stay in the area.
So I am petrified. In the next 3 years, absolutely petrified. I just think that I'm here for a reason and something will come of it, I'm hoping.
In most Australian states, landlords can currently evict people for no reason once their lease has ended. At 64, renter Peter Cooper and his wife Lindale have been warned they will be evicted soon to make way for a new property development.
So it'll be a matter of shrug our shoulders and accept the reality of it at the time.
Somebody must be inside now.
The Melbourne couple have rented the property for 10 years. They rarely go out for meals and grow their own vegetables in a community garden.
Do you know what is the name of this herb?
We eat at home. We use a lot of our own vegetables and home growing.
I think that's pennyroyal mint.
Garlic from my garden.
Peter's a lawyer who's thought about retiring to Southeast Asia.
And we could very much choose to enjoy a retirement where our toes are warm.
As more people are forced to rent for life, tenant lobby groups are hoping Australia changes its mindset.
I think the first thing we need to do is start accepting that rented homes are homes and they're not simply investment vehicles.
What about capping rents then? Do you think rents should be capped at maybe 1 or 2% above, CPI?
I think that kind of system is a sensible one. Most landlords in Australia have already moved away from rent as the main income source. They're really looking at the capital gains, and that's why things like the capital gains tax and negative gearing are such an important part of this conversation.
Australia's realtors say such changes threaten the current market.
If we have a change in government, which is likely at this stage, negative gearing will be altered because the Labor Party have rusted on. We're saying you be wary, okay, because the market's already sliding. You don't need to push it off a cliff.
The Real Estate Institute of Australia says the credit squeeze by banks post-Royal Commission is slowing new developments, which in turn will push rents much higher. Wendy's already given up on ever owning her own home.
I can't see us getting the deposit up. I really can't. Even if Bradley wanted to help, I don't even think we jointly...
I think I'll be a renter for life.